Guys, I know we've covered Noah, and I didn't know that this was kind of an update, if you want to say, because I didn't know that this was came out 13 days ago from Law and Crime. So let's do the disclaimer. 1976. Wow, I can't even say it. Oh my god. Anyways, fair use. So Law and Crime, you cannot come after me for going over this video. So, 13 days ago, 7 new shocking details of Oklahoma teens Noah Progressive. So, let's get into it.
Here's everything we know so far about the mysterious case of 19-year-old Noah Presgrove. Before his death, Presgrove was a major high school athlete, playing football, wrestling, and running both cross-country and track at Comanche High School. That's Comanche, Oklahoma, in the southernmost part of the state, a quick 20 miles from the northern Texas border. Presgrove graduated from high school in 2023 and had planned to enlist in the military along with his cousin. According to countless reports, Presgrove had a tight-knit group of friends, and that's who he was hanging out with on Labor Day week.
And that's this Labor Day weekend. So let's get some answers, y'all. I am filming this right now on Memorial Day, Labor Day weekend. It's pretty insane. And now that they had just said that it just, wow. Okay, back to it.
End of last year, the group threw a party that seemingly lasted for several days, celebrating both the long weekend and the 22nd birthday of Presgrove's friend, Avery Jo Combs. Around 40 people are said to have attended. According to several reports, Presgrove got into a fight in the early morning hours of September 4th, 2023, while at this party. The argument was with his best friend, Jack Newton. Remember that name, he comes up again. The fight was apparently over a girl, but according to Jack, it resolved quickly, and they ended it by telling each other how much they meant to one another. Around the same time frame, Presgrove was seen allegedly daring friends at the party to slap him in the face. This was caught on video, and here's a screenshot of that. It was posted at 1:42 a.m., and it's the last known video of Presgrove. So sometime after 2 o'clock that morning, Presgrove apparently took a group of friends on an ATV joyride, but crashed and flipped it over. We believe no one was injured in the crash, but afterwards, some friends helped Presgrove shower and clean up because he was allegedly too drunk. He also borrowed a pair of white sport shorts from his friend Jack before getting in an argument with the birthday girl, Avery Jo Combs. She told Presgrove he wasn't allowed to sleep in her bed and had to stay on the floor instead. After this, Presgrove apparently said he was going to cool off. By 3:41, one of Presgrove's friends took a Snapchat photo that has that exact timestamp. The caption reads, quote, "Well, Noah is missing." After that, no one knows what happened to Presgrove or where exactly he went. The next time he was seen was just before 6 o'clock in the morning when 2 911 calls came into local dispatch. 2 separate drivers reported something laying in the shoulder of the road on US 81 near Terrell, Oklahoma. They thought it could be a deer or a body. One caller told dispatch, quote, "I'm pretty sure there's somebody laying dead along the road. They look naked. I'm staying back." The caller was right. Presgrove was naked, wearing nothing but a pair of mismatched shoes. About 25 feet away from Presgrove's body were those white sport shorts Jack had loaned him just hours earlier.
No need to buy a new sofa. These amazing sofa covers are only a fraction of the price on Temu. They come in lots.
He was laying in the fetal position along the road just 1 mile from the party he just attended. Investigators say there was minimal blood on the scene, but Presgrove's injuries were shocking. The base of his skull had been split in two. His spine was fractured, and there was an 8-inch cut on his scalp that had been flipped back, revealing bone. So that was September 4th, 2023, but Presgrove's autopsy wasn't released until the following May. It lists cause of death as multiple blunt force injuries, but the manner of death is still undetermined. The Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation declared his death suspicious, but that led to more questions than answers. Investigators say they don't believe it was a hit and run, and they don't believe it was murder. So what then killed Noah Presgrove?
I mean, there's an awful lot going on. There's, an extended party. There's an accident on an ATV before the incident happens.
No
and
way.
There's a little bit of separation between the last time anybody hears from him and when they see him on the side of the road. So there's a lot going on. It sounds like they were hitting it hard for quite a few hours at this party. A couple of different conflicts, a physical fight, an argument. There's a lot going on that day.
That's Will Spilar, a retired commander and homicide detective based out of Cook County, Illinois. We reached out to him to make sense of Presgrove's case. Now, we know there was a lot going on at this party, but moving on to when Presgrove's body was found. To you, who has a major background in this sort of investigation, does it seem mysterious or suspicious to you?
There's so much blunt force trauma to the body. it indicates, and where he's found, it indicates that possibly he's struck by a car. Now, you would expect some kind of a transfer between the victim and the vehicle. Now, I don't know much about the rural roads back there in Oklahoma, but I imagine there's a lot of trucks, that sit a little higher. There's a lot of semi-trailer traffic, things like that, because his injuries are so significant. I would say it'd be very difficult to sustain that in just a standard beating. I mean, it looks, from what I see, and I don't have all the facts obviously, but it looks like he's hit by something. Then you have there's dragging, there's some dragging marks on his shoes. Which were two different shoes, if I read that correctly.
Sorry, guys, I got distracted.
It looks like
Sorry.
maybe he's hit by a truck or something that sits up higher, and maybe dragged along and rolled along. Injuries to his fingers as well. But it's just so much trauma to the body that it's difficult for me to believe that this is just a straight beating. Now, I'm not saying that it's not possible that he did take a beating and somebody dumped him on the side of the road.
Somebody
And then he was struck by a
unalived him
vehicle.
and hurt him.
I'd have to look at the autopsy report to see which of these injuries are post-mortem or ante-mortem, the ones that caused his death, because there's so much blunt force trauma. It seems like it was difficult for EME to make a determination. Obviously the cause of death, but not the manner.
All this goes back to the only thing we know for certain about the case. Pressgrove sustained multiple
Somebody
blunt force
hurt
injuries,
him
but we can't be
and
sure
then
what
left
they were.
him.
If we're talking about the autopsy, we know the cause of death. That's multiple blunt force injuries, but there is no manner of death
And
right
how
now.
old
It's listed as
was he, a
undetermined,
missing
and there was
teen
quite a
that
lengthy time
wanted to be
between
in
Noah
the
Pressgrove's death
military?
and then when the autopsy was released. So what do you make of
Oh,
all that?
crap.
Well, I think that the investigators, both the medical examiners, investigators, and the police were trying to do a thorough investigation, collaborate between the two departments, and come up with a manner. And it sounds like they just couldn't.
One of those
It sounds like they
kids
tried,
messed
but they
up.
couldn't. Whether it be from lack of physical evidence or unreliable interviews, it sounds like they couldn't. I've seen it a few times, but it's very rare that happens.
What's
One of
also
those
rare,
kids
or at
now.
least unusual, is law enforcement's stance on the possibility of a hit and run. At first, that's what authorities believed happened, but as the investigation went on, that came into question. The Jefferson County Sheriff has even said publicly he doesn't believe it was a hit and run. And we've talked about how
Yeah,
it
we know it's
appears,
not a
at
hit
least from
and
the jump,
run.
that this
We've
could have been
been
a car
knowing
crash,
it's
that
not
at
a
least the
hit and
severity of
run.
Pressgrove's injuries kind of line up with that. But now we have investigators saying there was no debris on the side of the road that usually
Nope.
happens when there's some sort of vehicular collision,
Exactly.
that they aren't able to recreate any sort of crash, so they don't believe that it was a crash. So if it's not a crash, what was it? Could it have been murder?
Certainly, it certainly could have been murder. Like I said, the injuries were so significant that we don't know which injury killed him. He's got so many injuries that could have proved fatal. Like I said, I don't know if he was dumped on the side of the road and then he's struck by a vehicle. And again, if I read it correctly, they're saying they don't think it was a hit and run. Now, if he's hit by a semi or really
my
a tall
God.
vehicle, it could be a hit and they don't know. They weren't sure what happened, especially semis. Semis wouldn't even really feel that. But yeah, if it's a vehicle, a car, there's going to be a transfer. There's going to be a transfer anyway on the undercarriage or whatever runs somebody over. But in this case, it could be a hit and they don't know they hit him. You think that somebody who's driving down that road at that time might come forward and say, "Oh, wait a minute, I did feel a little bump, driving down the street," or they just don't want to talk about it.
When first responders got there, they had received 911 calls that some of the motorists nearby had thought it was a deer initially. They didn't know that it was a body. So is it possible if a semi-driver was going through
That's
that area and
crazy.
hit something, they thought it was a deer rather than a person, and that's why they didn't turn around or report it?
Yes, absolutely, especially if he was laying down already when he was struck. I mean, if you're standing up and you're struck, and there's that front impact with the vehicle and the person, well, you're more than likely to know that, regardless if you're a semi, you're in a semi or not. If the person's standing upright, you strike somebody or strike something standing upright, you're going to have damage to the front of the vehicle. If he's on the ground already, and the vehicle rolls over him, that's a different story.
The issue with all this discussion is that Oklahoma investigators
Wow.
say it was not a hit and run, but they also say it was not a murder. I think what's so mysterious
So
about
what
this
the
case
hell
is
would it be?
they say
If
it's not a hit and run.
murder,
They
if
say it's
it's
not
not
murder, likely. But they don't know what it is,
ran
and
over,
it's still
what
so
could it be?
suspicious, mysterious. We're not sure where the investigation's headed. So what is the next step for officials who are looking into this case?
They're going to need something. They're going to need someone to talk about what they saw, try to figure out how he got where he got. Did he just walk away? Did somebody drop him
But
off?
nobody's speaking,
Obviously, I'm
that's
sure they
the
looked into ride
problem.
shares and things like that to see if he Ubered somewhere. And again, it's just there's going to have to be a break in the case that comes from someone who has some knowledge. Now, absent an accident, vehicular accident, or a murder, a beating death, I mean, what else is there? He could have fallen out of an airplane. I mean, he has some significant injuries that can only be caused in a couple of different ways. Obviously, the most logical is a motor vehicle accident. Again, like we spoke of, we don't know if he's already down and deceased and then struck by a car, or if he just passes out on the side of the road and gets struck by a car. So that's a couple of things that are going to be very, very difficult to determine.
So all this leads us back to that weekend-long party, the last time anyone for sure saw Pressgrove alive. But that angle of the investigation has some issues too. It seems like it was almost a 2-day party, kind of an ongoing Labor Day, 22nd birthday party, lots of drinking and hijinks going on. Does that make things a little bit more complicated now if investigators are going back? Because a lot of these partygoers were likely drunk or drinking, went to sleep late, so their memories might be a little hazy.
Absolutely, it does. And again, the more time passes, the less their memory is. And when you're dealing with intoxication or whatever else was going on there, it's likely that they forgot pretty much all about the event, depending on their level of inebriation. But the longer it goes out, the less viable these interviews are. Yeah, there was. It seems like as an investigator, that's a
Get
really
up
tough
there.
thing to start with. It's a bunch of witnesses who maybe not recall what happened or have a limited memory of what happened.
And if some of these people do remember what happened, let's say, but they do say I was intoxicated or inebriated in some way, can we even for sure 100% believe what they're saying because they were under the influence of something?
Well, when we take statements in interviews, one of the questions the state's attorney's going to ask is, are you under the influence of drugs or alcohol at this time? Were you under the influence at the time of the incident? So that's questions that are asked, and it does go to the credibility of the statement for sure. It hurts the credibility of the statement.
So the intoxication level at the party kind of poses an issue in terms of witness testimony. But there's another bit of evidence from the party that can't be disputed. We've also talked about the people in this small town, close-knit group. It sounds like it was a big group of friends that were at this party, and a lot of them were documenting the night on social media. So we talked about how they were likely drunk, and I'm sure spoke with investigators. But is this also something that investigators would then look at, their Snapchats or Instagrams, all of the photos or texts that they may have sent that night?
Absolutely. It's all part of it. Now, the first thing you got to do is figure out who was there. Now,
fresh air.
where social media plays a role in this is if they are on something that's, I don't know, one of these Snapchat or one of them goes away as soon as you send it. I'm not sure which one that is. But anything that has something out there, now, if as an investigator, if I'm reviewing this and I look around, I can see other people, even people that don't want to be identified or don't want to come forward. I can use another source to identify that person. Now I got another person to talk to. Social media is valuable in that point, in that area.
Yeah,
to
one of
identify
these
more
kids
potential
knows
witnesses. Who's there?
something. I mean,
We need
they
to find
know
out
what
who's there.
happened
We need
to
an
this little
inventory of who's there. And
boy.
again, like we talked about, this is a 2-day party.
Excuse me, he's not a
There's
little boy.
probably people coming and going throughout the course of the 2 days. So social media,
He's a
any kind of video
teenager
evidence,
that was going to
any
go
kind of video
into the
evidence is
military
crucial.
who lost his life.
I don't know what kind of surveillance
One of
systems they
those
have out
kids
there
at
in
that
the
party
rural
knows
area where this
something.
happened, but I'm
Somebody
sure the
knows
investigators looked into that.
something.
I'm sure there's a social media team that looked into that.
That also poses the question,
This
did
is
something
very
happen at the party that
suspicious
hasn't been made public?
to
The
me.
two main locations in this
Very
case are where Presco's body was
very
found along the road, and then the party that he was at
suspicious.
before this.
Suspicious
Is it possible
to
that
me.
something happened at the party that he actually died there and then
I
later was
mean-
moved to this location? What do you think?
I think that's very possible. It's very possible. The thing is, I don't know the time frame, whether or not the investigators went back to search for any kind of evidence at the party. I know that we obviously know there's a couple of arguments that go on throughout the course of this 2-day party. One of them's physical. We know that he crashes on an ATV. He could have sustained an injury, an internal injury there, and maybe passed away from internal bleed that nobody knew about. They loaded him up, mismatched his shoes, threw some pants on him, and tried to get him away from the scene. There's a lot of things that could happen that way. And if something did happen that way, someone should be talking about that.
So if that's the case, that something happened, I mean, we've heard these stories before where there's these drunken parties, an accident happens, friends try to cover it up. We're almost a year out since Presco's death. If that's really what happened, why has that not come to the forefront yet? Nobody seems to be talking about that.
Nope.
Sounds like no one's talking about it. If there were, and again, we know that the police did extensive investigations. I think there's a private investigator involved now who shared some information with the police that they uncovered. Right now, all the police investigation looks like it's going to a dead end. If this private investigator
Guys,
can open up
there's
another
so
avenue,
much to this story.
the police are definitely going to follow it. I mean, it's been a year. There can't be too many people talking about it.
Right.
But if there are, and this private investigator can uncover that, then the police have another avenue. Right now, it sounds like it's a dead end. Hopefully, there's things that were uncovered by this investigator that the police can act on. Because we need actionable evidence. We can speculate, we can guess, but we need actionable evidence if we're going to bring a prosecution. And we talk
Jack
about this when we talk
Newton
about these
was
cases.
his best friend.
It's one thing to know what happened, but you have to prove what
So
happened.
did
You have to
Jack
prove it was a
Newton
crime.
and him
You have
get
to bring
in a
people to justice
fight
for this,
over
and
that
that's a
girl-
pretty
that
extensive
girl?
process. Especially in a case where the farther you go out, the harder it is to put all those things together.
That brings us to the next part of the
See?
investigation, one independent from Oklahoma State detectives. You spoke about the private investigator, and that is something that the Presco family has brought in. So what would this PI bring to the table that Oklahoma investigators haven't yet?
A couple of things. One, private investigators don't have other cases that they're working on. They probably do, but they try to dedicate their time to the cases they're being paid for at the time. Police have other investigations and limited resources. The private investigator can dedicate more time. Plus, sometimes people don't like to talk to the police, and they might talk to the investigator.
With the
It doesn't get easier than this for creating video content with AI, and you can do it all with your phone. I'm using the InVideo AI app to create a fully edited video.
The private investigator out in the community, there's one person whose memory of the night is invaluable. There's a major player in this case who is Jack Newton. That's Noah Presco's best friend
See,
from
Jack
elementary school
Newton.
onward. And he was with Noah that night. Some people online are kind of speculating and pointing the finger at him. Maybe he knew what happened and isn't revealing it to police. But he's been very outspoken. I mean, he's appeared in People magazine. He's obviously talked to investigators and said, here's everything I know. But some people are saying potentially he knows something. So do you think the best friend would be a major source for investigators?
If he was there the whole time, yes, you're more than likely to be with your buddy. Your buddy's more than likely to be looking out for you in a situation where you can't look out for yourself. Coming forward, speaking to all the people that he's spoken to, I mean, I guess that's a good thing, but we've seen the cases before, and again, I'm not pointing the finger at anybody. We've seen the cases before, especially in homicides. Sometimes the most helpful person who knows the most is the offender.
And we do know in the night when they were partying, these two friends apparently got in some sort of fight or argument about a girl, it sounds like. They said eventually they made up, but could that have been something that spurred an argument and things got kind of carried away?
I was 19 once. I know that you argue with your friends over girls all the time. Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, that could be part of it, that it got out of control. But if there's a physical altercation to the point where this kid is hurt that bad, there's going to be more than one person that knows about it. And if somebody that cares about this person who's at this party sees this, I can't see any reason why they would not come forward.
Just to be clear, this isn't something that investigators have suggested or pointed to, and they haven't released the names of any suspects or even persons of interest. But that's not to say they don't have any. Do you think it's possible that investigators in Oklahoma know more than they're letting on? If in fact there was a crime here, sometimes they like to keep information closer to the vest in order to preserve a future case. So could they know something they're not telling us?
Sure, absolutely. And that's something that, if you don't want to compromise your investigation. If they have some evidence, I guarantee you, or some other information, that they're moving forward with it. Sometimes we don't want that out there. It's not like they're hiding anything, but they're trying to develop it more so you can become part of an actionable prosecution.
That's true. That is
sometimes if stuff gets leaked out there, the person of interest might get tipped, and then it kind of screws everything up. Or more people will get involved. So if they have something that they're working on, I wouldn't be surprised if they're keeping it close to the vest, as you said.
I think what's tough about this case is that his body was found in September of last year. We're nearing mid-August, so it's almost the 1-year anniversary of all this. His family is obviously still looking for answers, as is the nation. But what are the odds of us finding out what really happened this far out from his death?
I'm an old school homicide guy. There's no case closed until we find an offender or an explanation of what happened. So I think there's always some hope. There's cases that we've solved 30 years down the road. I hope for this family's sake it doesn't take something like that. But there's always hope. I can't ever give up hope. I mean, there's, like we talked about, there's people that know what happened. It's just finding that right person. And hopefully this investigator can do it, and they can collaborate with the police, and then we can get something for this family. I hate to use the word closure, but at least a sense of what happened to their kid.
In the nearly 1 year since Presgrove's death, his family has not stopped looking for answers. Presgrove's family has been very outspoken, saying that they want answers. Obviously, what happened to their son, brother, nephew, all of these things, they're looking for answers. But they say someone out there knows something. Someone has to know something. Do you think that's the case? Someone out there does know something?
Absolutely. I think somebody knows something. Now, try to put yourself in a position of these poor people. No idea what happened. They know that their child was killed in a violent fashion, regardless of whether or not it was like a murder like we spoke of, or if it was a vehicle accident. But they don't know how. And they've got law enforcement, who they rely on, like we all rely on, trying to do investigation, and they can't come up with answers. It's got to be crushing for the family. But I agree. Somebody knows something. Somebody knows the direction he left. Somebody may have left with him. And certainly whoever caused the injury, be it a motorist or another person, they know. Unless, of course, like I said, sometimes these semis, we've had cases where they hit something in the road, they don't even know what it is. They just keep going. But somebody knows something. Somebody knows something that happened at the party and when he left.
What are the next steps in the investigation? Because I know that it's still open. People are still talking about it, especially approaching the 1-year marker. What do you think is next for investigators?
Again, they have to continue to do interviews. The problem with the crime scene, if you want to call it that, the house, is anything that was there a year ago is not going to be there. Most likely. It'd be very difficult to go back and try to find physical evidence from a year ago. I'm not saying it's impossible. It'd be very difficult. Plus, you have to articulate probable cause to a judge for a search. And it's a year past. So the likelihood, and here's what I find with a lot of judges. The likelihood of evidence to be present 1 year later does not warrant violating the people's right to privacy. I run into that more than once. So the interviews are crucial. This investigator is crucial. They just have to keep talking to people. And I found out in my business, you got to keep talking to people. You can't solve a crime from behind a desk. You got to get out and talk to people.
Right now, Presgrove's death is still under investigation by the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. If you have any information about the events of September 4th, 2023, contact their tip line. Reporting for Long Crime, I'm Sierra Gillespie.
Alright, y'all. Sorry, that was a long video, but I wanted you guys to get that, and I wanted you guys to know that I didn't forget about Mr. Noah. I know that I didn't realize this was out, and this was 13 days ago. I'll have to go back and look and see if I talked about this video already. I don't think I did make any shorts about Noah recently, but I'll let you guys know. Love ya. Bye.